Good evening and welcome to Poland Daily. I'm Nicholas Richardson and this is the news. The Polish government has introduced measures to limit the spread of coronavirus. These include a ban on mass events, sanitary inspections at all borders, including ferries and long-distance trains. The National Security Council met today to discuss the crisis, the meeting having been called by President Andrzej Duda. There are currently 20 confirmed cases of coronavirus in Poland. Among those infected are General Jarosław Mika, the General Commander of the Armed Forces, who probably became infected during a meeting in Germany of the commanding staff of NATO countries.
According to Minister of Health Łukasz Szumowski, one of the people infected is General Jarosław Mika, General Commander of the Armed Forces, who just returned from a military council in Germany. The persons accompanying the general have been quarantined. The Minister of Health also provided a detailed program of care for persons quarantined. Each day, the Polish police will knock on each quarantined person's door, asking if everything is okay or not, but also asking for confirmation that the person who is in quarantine is in the place where they should be. Earlier, after the morning meeting of the government crisis management team, the Prime Minister Mateusz Morawiecki announced the cancellation of all mass events. We have decided it after our analysis that had shown that one of the reasons of greater spread of the virus in Germany and Italy were mass events. That is why we have strongly recommended that organizers cancel high-attendance events. Starting today, sanitary controls will be introduced at all borders, including ferries arriving at Polish ports and intercity long-distance trains. In connection with the spread of the epidemic in Germany, we decided that the border with that country should be secured as our first priority. In the case of Czech Republic, the border crossing is the one where we get the most of the flow from Italy, mainly at the Gorzycki crossing. Still later this morning, right at 11 a.m., a meeting of the National Security Council called by the Polish President Andrzej Duda started. It lasted over 2 hours. Until now, the situation does not look bad, taking into account that we are a nation of 38 million people. Percentage-wise, the number of sick people is very small, but we have to realize that this might change dramatically any day, any moment. That is why I continue to ask everyone to observe all the precautionary measures. In addition to the ban on mass events, there will also be a question about closing schools and kindergartens, although this is the responsibility of local governments. This situation occurs, among others, in Poznań, where schools and kindergartens will be closed from tomorrow as a result of the city authorities' decision. On the other hand, in Warsaw, by a decision of the rector of the Medical University of Warsaw, classes at this university have been suspended. In the morning, the Minister of Higher Education, Jarosław Gowin, said that he obliges universities to urgently proceed to analyzing the possibilities of a transition to online learning.
The Italian authorities have implemented even more extreme precautions than those in Poland. Italy is the main centre of the coronavirus in Europe, and today the Italian government restricted unnecessary travelling inside the country.
Despite the fact that the latest data indicates that there are more than 9,000 confirmed cases of the coronavirus, including 463 deaths, the Italian government maintains that there is no need to panic. Italian Prime Minister Giuseppe Conte has introduced a ban on public gatherings to cover the whole country. Schools and universities have been closed until April 3rd. There won't be the red zone anymore, there won't be zone number 1 nor zone number 2. There is just one Italy now. A good decision to make today is to stay at home. Our future and the future of Italy is in our hands. We have to be more responsible than we ever were before. But all of us are aware that it's not easy to change our habits. The new regulation applies to 60 million Italian citizens who may travel only to work and back, and also to hospital in cases of emergency.
In Holland, it's also corona. You can get it there also. This was booked, and yeah, there was no negative advice for traveling. So we did come, and now in Rome, it's all of this. Italy is all closed, but yeah, we don't know anything.
When the train stopped and we got off, they asked us to file some documents. The police officers took a photo of our IDs. I think if we were infected by the virus, they wouldn't have let us go.
The government said that the grocery stores will remain open. Despite the restrictions, Italians are trying to live normal lives.
I've noticed that the people on the trains were very careful. They stood 1 meter apart from each other. I saw people wearing masks, but besides that, everything seemed to be normal.
I didn't notice any risk on the train because there were few people there, maybe 2 people in each car of the train. I'm more worried about the situation in grocery stores because there are more people there. Even the city center has emptied. The media have recently reported about the desperate act of an inhabitant of Rome who paid more than €1,200 to a taxi driver to get her hometown from Milan.
Chinese President Xi Jinping visited Wuhan, the source of the coronavirus epidemic, for the first time since the outbreak. The visit of the Chinese head of state was intended to be a signal to the world that China has now dealt with the threat of COVID-19. However, the World Health Organization remains sceptical and has not excluded the possibility of the virus becoming a global epidemic.
The number of infected around the world keeps rising. There are currently over 110,000 confirmed cases and 4,000 deaths. According to WHO officials, the question of the coronavirus becoming a global epidemic depends on the situation in 4 countries where there has been the biggest number of infections: China, South Korea, Iran and Italy.
Now that the virus has a foothold in so many countries, the threat of a pandemic has become very real. But it would be the first pandemic in history that could be controlled. The bottom line is we're not at the mercy of the virus.
The number of the infected and deaths caused by the virus grow in the United States. 717 cases were confirmed in 32 states. As many as 26 people have died. The Grand Princess cruise ship finally docked in the port in Auckland, where 21 people were confirmed to have been infected. There are 3,500 people on board the ship, 5 of whom are Poles. The local authorities decided that the passengers are to be sent to 2 military hospitals in Texas and Georgia, where they will be further quarantined. The crew of the ship will remain under quarantine on board. Some better news come from South Korea, where the Center for Disease Control and Prevention announced that the daily number of new infections is at its lowest for 11 days.
어제 확진된 신규 환자는 131명으로
As of midnight today, there are 7,212 patients in quarantine due to COVID-19, while 247 people have been released from quarantine after full recovery and 54 people have died. We offer our deepest condolences to the families of the deceased. There were 131 new confirmed cases reported yesterday, bringing the total tally to 7,513.
들로 인해 새로운 지역사회 감염이
The president of the Polish Bishops' Conference, Archbishop Stanisław Gondecki, has asked priests to increase the number of Sunday Masses so each is attended by fewer worshippers in order that the faithful are able to meet the guidelines of the sanitary services on gatherings of large numbers of people. The Archbishop also appealed for prayers to end the epidemic.
In accordance with the instructions of the Chief Sanitary Inspector not to organize large gatherings, I request, as far as it is possible, an increase in the number of Sunday Holy Masses in churches, so the number of faithful present at liturgies could match the regulations proposed by the sanitary services. Hospitals treat the diseases of the body, while churches serve by treating the illnesses of the soul. I therefore can't imagine a situation where we couldn't pray in our churches.
That's the news. Thank you for watching. Stay with us for the weather, Poland Daily Business and more programmes. But from me, it's have a good night and a better tomorrow.
Hello and welcome to Poland Daily Weather. The forecast tonight will bring rain throughout Poland. We can expect temperatures of 4 to 8 degrees. Tomorrow we can expect showers throughout northern, eastern, southern and central Poland. The warmest spots on the map will be Wrocław and Zielona Góra with a high of 13 degrees, and the coldest will be Koszalin at 8 degrees. The next 3 days will once again bring rain to Poland on Thursday in the northern and central regions. By Friday we will once again see a bit of winter. In the northeast we can expect sleet, and on Saturday we will also see sleet in the central regions of the country. That is all for now. I thank you for joining us, and I invite you to stay with us for Poland Daily Business.
Poland Daily Business edition. Tonight we will talk about energy, obviously, because Jakub Wiech of Energy 24 is our guest, so welcome to the show. I saw a picture or a movie clip yesterday, and that was a teenage girl, obviously intellectually challenged, being used by the top politician of European Union. She talked to, or the adults were talking to her, among them the Chief Commissioner of European Union, the person responsible for climate in the European Union. Did you have any idea who am I talking about?
I think that you are talking about Greta Thunberg.
Right, right. And there is a question, like, she skipped the school. She's 17, although she looks younger, and she's a symbol. Why do European officials bother to lose a time with this girl?
Well, I think that it stems from the fact that Greta Thunberg, her way of activism actually, well, it puts people on the streets. It put YAF in the protest, like the Fridays for Future protest. She made it in terms of activating some kind of social emotion. That was.
But that emotion is contrafactual, right, or not?
Well, actually, it's hard to say whether it is or not contrafactual. I mean, we all see the implications of global warming. We see it very clearly during the current winter, when in the most of Poland, most of the country, we see no snow.
And yeah, but normally in Poland, from say November to March, there is a construction season stopping, like no jobs, no anything, because there is this frost and that does not allow production. This time we got along. All those people were working. All the deadlines will be met next year. So that's great. For this industry,
for the construction industry, maybe it is great. But when we wait several months, we may encounter the fact that, for example, many pests will survive the winter and it will destroy our crops. Or due to lack of the snow, the hydrological situation of Poland will be terrifying and terrible in the sense
talking to Greta Thunberg is a solution for that.
It's not a solution, it's some kind of alarm, it's some kind of a symbol, but to properly describe Greta Thunberg, I think that we have to wait several years more to see what will be done with the movement that she launched, and to look clearly what the results will be.
Well, what is alarming to me is that the adult people who made their careers, who are in their 50s, in their 60s, in their 70s, and they graduated of several institutions, they had their curriculum, and we can see what they know, what they don't, they know languages, and so on, are talking to emotional child, and by definition, they have to lower their level to this childish, emotional hysteria, so to say. And I don't know if this helps in solving any problems. If you are facing a child, you don't try to be on the level with it. You try to comfort this child. Come on, nothing will happen. Yet they are associating themselves with this child, and the policy consequences. If you give your policy to the child, this may not necessarily be beneficiary to all of us.
Well, if the leaders will limit their actions just to chats with Greta Thunberg, yes, that's true that we won't do anything serious in the sphere of climate and the climate emergency. However, I see that it may affect things like elections. It may have some effect on the voters' choices. However,
yeah, because the same emotional thing is very appealing to the millennials who are pretending to be as dumb as Greta Thunberg and pretty much repeat the same statements she's
I would
making.
not use the word dumb. I mean, the millennials, this new generation, is actually the first generation that clearly focus on climate issues. It is important for these young people to preserve the climate as it is, as we know it. And we have, due to this, we have some new sociological events, like, for example, climate depression, or other psychological effects that the climate change has on young people. And well, it's disputable. The character of this is disputable. But what's sad is that some people use Greta Thunberg as their shield in avoiding some kind of actions. We also what Siemens CEO said to Greta Thunberg when she appealed to them
back to school,
to him to skip the investment in a coal mine in Australia. And he just said that, okay, I talked to investors, and sorry, we cannot do this because the investors needs to be fed with money, with income from this investment. So this is it was
to me it sounds like a reason among emotions. To you, it sounds like a bad man who is following his business ideas rather than listening to the clear Prince Greta.
Rather an example of the real Greta effect on economy or politics, because Greta is supposed to be by many people as a climate warrior or a game changer that will dictate to even whole states or organization what they should do about climate. Well, if we look what happened in this Siemens case, we see that Greta has very limited influence when it comes to some real actions. She's being invited to attend in conference like COP or other summits, but in the terms of real actions undertaken, her influence is very limited.
I just hope that she returned to school and we will not hear about her, but that was 2 months ago. But now I see she resurfaced, and we will have more of this because it's working. The manipulation works. This is how I see it.
Well, I'm not sure where there is a manipulation. I mean,
you put apparently innocent child who is saying something in name of the future generations and make adults listen to, but the child has no clue. I mean, she has no own research. She doesn't even graduated from the primary or secondary school. And come on.
That's why she uses the things like IPCC report.
This is a case for the family court in Sweden, because clearly her parents are neglecting their duties, because her first duty is to finish the school.
Well, of course, the way their parents raise Greta Thunberg is to see if they are not neglecting her. It's the burden of the court or other institutions of Swedish parenthood institutions. But Greta Thunberg is not manipulating when she says about the climate emergency or climate catastrophe that is awaiting around the corner, because what she says has been said by many scientists in the last several years. She relies on reports by IPCC or by other institutions like NASA or NOAA. So in the terms of her views, it's they are according to the science. So we cannot say that the views of Greta Thunberg are manipulated anyway.
Jakub Wiech of Energetyka24.com, sir. Thank you very much for this conversation. That was it for Poland Daily Business tonight.
Good evening and welcome to Poland Daily Weather. Tomorrow we can expect showers in the northern, eastern, central and southern regions of the country, and partly cloudy skies in Szczecin, Poznań and Bydgoszcz. The temperatures will vary between 8 and 13 degrees. In Europe, we can expect clear skies in the southern regions of the continent, rain in Dublin, Stockholm, Helsinki, Warsaw, Kiev and Vilnius, scattered showers in Moscow, and partly cloudy skies throughout the rest of the continent. The warmest spot on the map will be Lisbon at 25 degrees, while the coldest will be Helsinki at 3 degrees. That is all for now. I thank you for joining us, and I invite you to stay with us for further Poland Daily programs.
Good day, everyone. My name is Maria Kądzielska, and you are watching Poland Daily Culture. A book, A Dance on the Ruins, is already in the bookstores. It tells the story of a Polish ballerina who made a huge career in the USA. With me in the studio is Wiktor Krajewski, the author of the book, and Madame Nina Nowak, the heroine herself. And you buckle up, because the story is truly amazing. Wiktor, which part of Nina Nowak's story made the biggest impression on you, so you decided to write a book about it?
Oh, I think that there is not a single moment that, was really important for me, because each moment is still making a great impression on me. For me, what's the most interesting is that Nina Nowak decided to, after the World War II, she decided to get married to somebody that she didn't know, and to take some steps and to travel to United States, even if she didn't know English well, right? And for me, it's really, really interesting that the horror is over, the terror is over, and you decided to do something, to travel to unknown place, right? And for me, it's really something interesting. And I was thinking, what would I do if I would, have to decide whether I go with somebody that I totally do not know and do not know the language of this person, right? And to spend some part of my life with this person.
What was the hardest for you in communication? Was it anything that, for example, was really difficult for him to understand, which you were talking about your story? Or, for example, because of the difference of age and also few generations, was it something which brought complications for you?
Somehow it was nothing like that. It was extremely easy. I think the interest of my story first. The second, that I was a ballerina, classical ballerina, that was very different for a young man. First, he was fascinated with my story of my profession. And then when it came to my story of my life and the wartime, that was some difficulty and lots of shock also to the young man, that one person could do all those things and still is alive and this age and straight thinking.
And if you could put out just for one moment of Nina's life to tell right now the people, what would it be?
For me, being in a labor camp, this is the moment that really, the hardest moment of Nina Nowak's life, and living in and working in a labor camp is something that I would highlight when it comes to her story. I think so, yeah, because she had to live in a cruel world that she didn't meet before. After being a really famous soloist, ballet dancer that was well known, who traveled the whole world, now this labor camp was a real nightmare for her. But she decided to be strong and to do everything that is possible to leave this place and to live a happy life after it.
Is there anything which you didn't manage to put in the book because, for example, of the frames? There are, after all, not so many pages to use. You cannot have 1,000 pages, and you would like to share the story right now with us. For example, is there any element of Nina's Novak life which you didn't put there? Maybe you would like to highlight it a little bit more than it is described in the book.
There were very hard moments in my life. First, to leave my family in very bad conditions, almost unhuman conditions, and travel myself, because when I married, my husband flew, and I was going by boat, and there was a torment, and I was alone, young woman. It was terrible for me. I didn't know if I will overcome and live again. So the moment to leave everybody, I found myself alone in a boat, which was a storm in the winter. It was very, very hard. So I just pray somehow, and I must faint in the boat, because when I arrived to New York, I found myself in the clinic. So I couldn't stand anymore anything after the war, what I went through. So like this, I came to the United States, only with a little valise.
Incredible and very, very brave altogether. And since most of your life you spend in an English-speaking world outside of Poland, and this book is in Polish, are you planning an English language edition?
Oh, it depends on our publisher, but I hope that there would be a moment when the book will be published in English, because, Nina Novak is well known among the whole world, right? So I think that, people from United States, people from France, or even people from Russia would be interested in her story of life. And I hope that there will be one day when the book will come translated into English language.
It was translated. I about to have someone wanted to publish, but before I came here, and the book was published here in Polish language. So this is in a process of something that can happen and probably will happen.
So I keep the fingers crossed, and I do think that the story is so incredible that it will conquer the world, and everyone will enjoy reading this book as we are enjoying it, especially even more because you lived in the English world, so in USA. Your performances are there, so definitely people will love and enjoy it. And I'm very proud also that the Polish ballerina made such a huge career there in the big world. And I hope also you are proud of it. And I do think you should be interested in reading Dance on the Ruins, written by Viktor Krajewski. It is a story which should not be forgotten. And thank you for watching Poland Daily Culture.
Welcome to Poland Daily History with me, Nicholas Richardson. And we're continuing our canter around the course of Polish history with my studio guest, Professor Krzysztof Jabłonka. Professor, thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
And if we can start today, we're looking at Władysław Sikorski, who was, after the fall of Poland in the Second World War, the first Prime Minister of Poland, the government in exile, based in London. What can you tell us about Sikorski?
Pamiętajmy, że Sikorski jest młodszym kolegą i konkurentem Józefa Piłsudskiego.
Władysław Sikorski was a younger colleague and competitor of Józef Piłsudski. These two greatly important people for Poland differed both in their origin and place of birth. Józef Piłsudski, the Marshal of Poland, came from Lithuania and represented the old tradition of the Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth, while Władysław Sikorski was born near Tarnów, Galicia, in the Austrian partition, where Poles were treated well. They had everything at their disposal except for the army. The army had to be supplemented by volunteer shooting troops, which initially trained as the so-called National Landwehr, meaning voluntary paramilitary troops. They were called the Riflemen, or the Riflemen's Union. Władysław Sikorski was a very generous assistant in forming these units. In World War I, he fell into conflict with Piłsudski, as he was of a different opinion. Józef Piłsudski disbanded his legions in order to move on to the Entente side. He succeeded in doing so. It was a huge masterpiece of how to switch from pro-German troops to anti-German troops. He clearly said that the role of Poles is to win over all three partitions, and not just one with the help of the other two. That is where Piłsudski was disturbed by Władysław Sikorski, who was extremely attached to Austria, stood by their side for a very long time, and continued his cooperation with Austria when Piłsudski was already ending it. This is where the paths of these two men crossed. When Piłsudski, as head of state, resigned from all functions and went into exile to Sulejówek near Warsaw, the time came for Władysław Sikorski, who became Minister of Military Affairs. Indeed, at that moment he was forming an army. He had a great influence, above all on the Lviv district, with which he was connected. He initiated the erection of the grave of an unknown soldier in Warsaw, and after Piłsudski's May coup, in which he behaved really decently because he kept his neutrality, he did not order the army to fight either against Piłsudski or against the government because he feared the Ukrainian uprising. For some time he was treated well by Marshal Piłsudski. Ultimately, he found himself in exile and became very dependent on French intelligence. When the war broke out in 1939, when the whole government and command had to leave Poland, fleeing to Romania, as a result of French intelligence, a new government led by Władysław Sikorski was appointed. He, in turn, clung to France too tightly, and it was difficult to explain to him that France was failing and that it was necessary to evacuate to Great Britain. If it had not been for his excellent collaborators, Sikorski would have probably become prisoner of German special services.
No i gdyby nie jego świetni współpracownicy, prawdopodobnie Sikorski byłby już więźniem, jak nie rządu Vichy, to na pewno niemieckich służb.
Professor, if I could now ask you essentially two questions. One, how did Sikorski manage in England once he'd left France? And second, of course, in 1943, he died in an air crash, which has been controversial ever since. Maybe you could say a couple of words about those two subjects.
No, to jest najpoważniejszy problem Polski i II wojny światowej.
This was the most serious problem of Poland in World War II, the death of General Sikorski. In France, the government maintained a great deal of autonomy, even changed its place of residence from Paris, where all offices of the French Republic were located, to Angers. It was an exceptionally Polish place. Not far away was the camp in Kouèkidon. From there, it was possible to leave the ports of Vendée much faster and sail to Great Britain. The Polish government in exile resided in the Rubens Hotel there. At a time when France had fallen and even partly switched to the German side as part of the Nazi puppet government in Vichy, Winston Churchill proclaimed Poland as his then only ally and spoke beautiful words towards Poland. Meanwhile, King George VI was visiting the Polish army. He also hosted Polish pilots in recognition of their contribution to the Battle of England, as well as training camps in Scotland. The Polish government played a huge role in the defense of Great Britain. They were the first to fight, that was the saying, and it was true. Władysław Sikorski's government also led all the other governments in exile, and let us remember that this list included the Norwegian government with King Harald VII. There was a part of the Danish government, because their main government was surprised by the German onslaught, and the king was not able to leave the country. There were of course the governments of the Netherlands, Belgium, Luxembourg, and the French Committee of National Liberation, formed by Charles de Gaulle. All these governments were presided over by Władysław Sikorski. He even proposed to Czechoslovakia a West Slavic union of 3 nations in the future, and even tried to include the Sorbs as the 4th nation. It seemed that these were sincere actions. Unfortunately, he did not know that Edvard Beneš, president of the Second Czech Republic, was an agent of the Soviet Main Intelligence Directorate, or the GRU, who obviously torpedoed these efforts. Beneš was loyal to Stalin and listened to him unconditionally. Perhaps he was even involved in the attack on Sikorski, because the pilot of the plane that crashed was a Czech by the name of Edward Prchal, who under very odd circumstances survived the accident and was unable to say why he fell into the water. Our Prime Minister and Commander-in-Chief flew to the Polish army, which had just left Russia in a terrible condition, neglected, infected with typhus, but still alive. He visited the army, it reformed, and then captured Monte Cassino, which the Allied armies were unable to capture for 6 months. Sikorski was returning from there, and only then did the lightning strike him. To this day, the assumptions of who the culprit of General Sikorski's untimely death are ascribed to Russian intelligence.
Wtedy uderzył w niego piorun śmierci. Do dziś przypuszczenia kierowane są pod adresem wywiadu rosyjskiego.
That's all we've got time for on this episode. Thank you for watching, and thank you to Professor Jabłonka for joining us. Do join us again on Poland Daily History, where we delve into the fascinating and long history that is Poland.
Hello everybody, and welcome back to Poland Daily Travel. We are here in the ancient village of Ino Łódź. We're about 60 kilometers or so from Łódź, and we're between Tomaszów Mazowiecki and further points east towards the Vistula River. On the Police River, as we're following the river on our adventures. This is one of the oldest towns, as I said in the last segment, in Poland from the mid-1100s, and this is a typical castle. It's a little more, a typical medieval castle. It's a little more restored, although it's not in its full glory with fully restored walls. They do have facilities here for banquets and things like that inside, and it has been restored pretty well for a village of about 700 people. It's not the largest place in Poland by any stretch of the imagination, but a much nicer castle than we saw in Rawa earlier when we restarted our journey down the Police River. Here we're going to go look at the river in the next segment, I believe, and we'll see what it looks like. But it's getting, you know, it's really feeding. You can see these the plains around here. The agriculture is indeed rich, and if you could smell the air, you would know what I mean, because it's obviously a lot of farming taking place. But at any rate, this is Ino Łódź, a stop well worth it on the Police River. And in the summer, if you were kayaking, this would be a nice place to pull off, have some lunch, I'm sure. At any rate, we shall continue and look around the town a little more and then continue on along the Police River towards the Vistula. Stay with us. We'll be right back. Then we head east through the resort village of Spawa and on to Ino Łódź. There are plenty of views of the particularly beautiful Police River. I can't wait to go kayaking there in the summer. It looks absolutely inviting. Even in the winter. Ino Łódź also, what a gem of a town. It has a rich medieval history, being about 900 years old. There's plenty to see here. There's a castle, a church, high up on a hill, affording amazing views of the river valley. It's a great stop along your way east to the Vistula River. So come along with us on the Police River. You're going to really enjoy this. Hey, and thanks for watching. This is Poland Daily Travel. Why do we do it? We do it for you. I'm Will, and I approve of this message. Hello, everybody, and welcome back. Just after that break, we went down by the river, but it wasn't a good place to shoot. But we decided to come up and have a look at the church, and it's a good thing we did. This is the Romanesque Church of St. Giles. As you can see, it's almost like a fortress. There was once a Benedictine abbey attached to it, but that was destroyed by the Mongols. This church is, well, it's getting on for 950 years old. It dates to about 1080 something. They say 1082, but who can be absolutely sure? It's a long time ago. But it's getting on for 1,000 years old. That's 10 centuries that building pretty soon has been standing there. Quite remarkable. As we stand up here also, we can see the whole, we can take in the whole vista with the river Police. It's beautiful from up here. Really is. Extraordinary sight. Stretching from the west to the east down here and looking extremely blue and inviting on this day. The history of this city is full of invasions and warfare. You have the Mongols who came through here and destroyed everything. The abbey, as I just mentioned. You have the Swedes who came through in the 1600s, mid-1600s, and destroyed the town. It was also on the front lines. This town was also on the front lines. Ino Łódź. Helicopter. The wave to them. Ino Łódź was on the front lines of World War I. It was right on the edge of the main front in December of 1914. So that's, you know, a few months from the beginning of the war in August. Also, center of fighting. What are they looking for? It's a military helicopter. So there's a lot of military training still in this area. At any rate, in the Second World War, this was also a place of where a lot of fighting took place because of the river crossing here and because of its strategic location on the edge of, well, sort of splitting Poland in half, if you like. It's a remarkable day to be here. It's a beautiful, beautiful day, as you can see. Quite the church, quite the church. St. Giles, a very important saint in Catholic history, and fittingly, appropriately named. This is Poland Daily Travel. We're in Ino Łódź, just a little town, a hamlet on the Police River, about 100 kilometers south of Warsaw and about 60 kilometers from Łódź to the east. We're going to continue and make our way eastward along the Police River on a beautiful day. in February. See you in the next episode.